Our raspberries and loganberries have finished fruiting. The raspberries are summer flowering raspberries, which means that they fruit on last year's stems, and the loganberries fruit on last year's stems as well. So because they've finished fruiting, I need to cut out last year's stems, and particularly with the loganberries I need to tie in this year's stems for fruit for next year. So this stem here is a last year's stem. You can see the spent fruit. We picked quite a lot. There's still a couple of fruit left on them, but they're not really worth anything. And I need to get on with tidying this place because the pathway is completely blocked. So this was tied in and wrapped along a piece of wire. As you can see, this piece of wire, the wire needs a little bit of tensioning again. So I wrapped the stem around the wire so it's easier for them to pick. This is last year's stem. This is this year's stem, and it will produce fruit next year. You can see there's no fruit on it and it's quite young growth. So I'm going to get on with this and I'll show you what happens in a few minutes. Another bit here. Looking at the base where the plant comes up out of the ground, you can see the old stems are brown and the new stems are green. Some of these are quite weak, but some of them are very strong and can be carried or can be tied in. So remove all of the brown stems to the ground or a little bit above the ground and tie in the new stems along there. So I've been removing quite a few of the old stems from the wires, but I have to remove them bit by bit because they're so tangled up and there was weeds and things around them. But looking at this second plant here, they're clump forming, and it's debatable whether they're a second plant or not, because a little bit like perennials, they side shoot and you can take a piece off the side. But they're clump forming rather than like the raspberries, which tend to kind of sprout up everywhere, as you can see, and they're moving across to here as well. These ones tend to stay, the loganberries tend to stay in a clump. But you can see again the difference between the new stems and the old stems, which is this one and this one here. So I'm cutting that one, and you can see that there's actually some fruit on it, which means it's last year's stem. Most of the fruit is finished, apart from this lovely one here. Yummy. So I continue on taking the old stems out like this. This one here. And when I've got them all out, I can start tying in these long new stems which will produce the fruit for next year. I've removed all of the old stems and some of the newer ones that were weaker, and I've kept the best of them, which are the ones that are thick like this. And now you can see that the wires I have left are free and ready to put the loganberry new stems, this year's stems, onto them. So I'll be wrapping them along these stems here. They're really prickly, so I probably should be wearing gloves, but I think I'll manage. I've wrapped some of these stems, as you can see, along the wire, and these ones down lower. And I'm starting to do these ones here. So the ones that I haven't tied in yet, I'm kind of leaving them out this way, so as to allow me space to pull them in one by one into the wires and wrap them. So there we have it. I have all of the stems wrapped around the wires and tie it in, and you can see it looks a lot more neat. Incidentally, this structure here is a hoop system to put some netting over when we have fruit so the birds don't steal it. So next thing I'm going to get onto here is the raspberries. These are the raspberries, the summer raspberries. There's quite a lot of weeds among the raspberries, including self-seeded potatoes and various different things, nettles, willow herbs, and these columbines, the aquilegia, which are quite nice when they're in flower, but at the moment they're not going to flower now till the middle of next year, so I can clean them up and cut them back a little bit here and try and make this place a little bit more neat and get the raspberries back in along these rows with the timber posts at the end. Pull some of the weeds from around the raspberries and I'm ready to start pruning out the old stems. So the difference is, this is a new stem. You can see there are no flowers or spent fruits on this. This is a stem that has already fruited. You can see the spent fruit hips. So I need to prune these out. And if you look down at the base, the green ones here are the new stems which will fruit next year, and these ones here are the ones that have already fruited. So I'll prune these at the base. It was a week and a half ago that I pruned the raspberries and loganberries, but at the time I never got the last piece of footage which shows the raspberries after removing the old stems, and I still need to tuck in some of the new stems into place and probably pinch them out a little bit at the top, but I wouldn't do that for another month and a half maybe, because I don't really want to have any more growth when I prune them. This end I've got a little bit of a problem, and I don't know what it is, but the raspberry canes look a little bit sick as opposed to this end where everything looks quite vigorous and healthy. These beds get a top up of manure every year as a mulch. Since doing this pruning, the weather has changed a lot. It's warm, it's humid and very damp, and our blight resistant Sarpo potatoes have got a lot of blight on the top, so we've removed the top stems, which is disappointing because it's about a month and a half, maybe 2 months too early for it. But I'm led to believe that even if the Sarpo potatoes, the main crop ones, Sarpo Mira, if they get blight, it doesn't travel down so easily or doesn't take them over as quickly or as completely as it would happen with the non-resistant varieties. So I'm hoping that I will have some good potatoes among these. Back to these for a minute. You can see anyway now that these are ready, apart from tucking in some of the stems and possibly tying them into the wires. They're ready now for next year, and I'll have nothing much more to do with them until next year, the same time next year when I have to prune out some stems. When I gave you a tour of the garden, I told you that re-roofing the shed was on the list, and we've put some galvanised corrugated iron onto the shed roof just in time for the rain. This was done at the weekend, but we also added on this sloped area. The only thing new here is the corrugated iron, and the rest of it is a salvaged shed. And the panels have been cut down and modified, including the door, to make this guinea pig run. In the tunnel, the grapes are ripening really well, and as opposed to Park House, there's not a sign of powdery mildew on these black Hamburg grapes. And you'll hear a fan going at the moment. We harvested our onions 2 weeks ago, and we were drying out the stems and the onion bulbs, but they were in the stable, and the atmosphere, the air is so damp at the moment that the stems were starting to rot. So I have set up this fan to keep the air dry in this very wet weather, and hopefully to dry off the stems so as we don't lose all of our onion crop. Every year in the gardening calendar, every single year is different, and you get some things do well and others don't. These cucumbers, we've gotten some cucumbers from them, from the plants. These ones have been better, but these ones kind of sat and did not a lot. And a huge problem with our tomatoes this year is that we've got blight on them, and that's because of the damp, humid air. The tomatoes don't really like this damp, humid air, and because they are a member of the potato family, the blight transfers from the potatoes, even the ones that haven't got blight. It will transfer in the air to the tomatoes. And these ones are a small cherry variety, but we're not really getting a lot of them because of I suppose the growth hasn't been brilliant either. The lettuces and the basil are actually doing really well, having said that. And this is a perennial spinach, and we've got lots of this, and we've cut it right back, and we'll start to water it, and it will come back again, and we'll have it right into the autumn and the winter. Some more onions. We pulled out the huge, almost supernatural courgette plant that was there, and this one didn't do quite as well, but it's doing well now, and we're getting fruit off it. This one was way too big for the bed, whereas this one is kind of has a little bit more manners. And these are a perpetual strawberry, so they produce strawberries all through the summer for a much longer season than the other ones. Not quite as many, a little bit like some of the autumn raspberries. They produce over a longer period into the late summer, but they don't produce the glut that the other strawberries will produce.